If you got a Bible or you got a version of the Bible, first time they're mentioned is in Genesis, and this is proleptic because we know absolutely positively there was no way the Philistines were here. They weren't even thinking about it yet, because this is in the days of Abraham. So bear with me, this doesn't seem too heretical to anybody, but it kind of indicates to us that absolutely there was editorial work being done on what had been written, because it adds in names that didn't exist yet in the area. And so while God certainly could do that, there's no reason to say, oh, he just was predicting the Philistines would come. So it's this idea. That doesn't mean it's less inspired. And I would also not buy into it wasn't edited until after they returned from exile. The reason for that is because they don't believe that God could predict everything as well as it is, like in the book of Daniel and stuff like that. So that it just degrades God. But in this particular case, like in Genesis 21, after the covenant ceremony at Beersheba, verse 32, so they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, rose up and returned to the land of the Philistines. It's kind of I use the example of Fremont. 100 years ago, what was Fremont called? Fremont was called Ohlone or Mission San Jose, because it was part of the California Mission, or the Indians were the Ohlone Indians. And then after that, it became known as Centerville. And then in the 50s, it became known as Fremont. So, your town probably has gone by multiple names as well. And so here, it's calling it by the name that it eventually would be, the land of the Philistines. They go to Exodus 31. 13, that's correct. Thank you.
and
17, yeah.
Is it because I'm being so cheeky?
Yeah.
When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt.
I think there's a big hint in this passage. Lest they see war and return to Egypt. The reason that God doesn't have them come up the coast, but go to the east side around Edom and Moab, is because he wants them not to see war, the war that was going to happen on this coast here. At the collapse of the Bronze Age, everybody starts moving around because they need to survive. They move because there's drought, because there's plague, because there's all sorts of things, pestilence, etc. And so as a result of that, in Eric Klein's book, The Collapse of the Bronze Age, 1177, the reason he calls it that date, do you remember the reason he named it that date? That's when the Philistines attacked Egypt, and Egypt was able to repulse them. But that wasn't the first time they were here. They were already over here. And so of the different people groups, and it's Egypt that gives them the name the Sea Peoples. Bible never calls them that. And so there's different people groups, the Neheshtu, the Danites, the people we call the Philistines, and things like that. So they're coming, where are they coming from? Aegean, southern Europe, in that area, maybe Kaftor, which is Cyprus, right? And you go okay, they're coming down here because they cannot survive. They don't just leave their home because they got nothing else to do. They leave because they cannot survive. And what they want is a solid food source. And the place of the solid food source, that's not easy to say, solid food source, is the Nile River. And so they attack Egypt. And they attack Egypt the first time in the 13th century. So they come over here and they're going to go down and attack, and they're first repulsed by Ramses II. And then the Sea People groups get larger in number, and they attack again. And so they show up here in number at the beginning of the 12th century, like 1190. They attack Egypt again, and they're repulsed this time by Ramses III in 1177, hence the name of the book.
So they're plan was never to stay here.
Right. They want to go down to Egypt. In fact, Ramses III, when he talks about his victory, and he has a big old wall with the picture of the fighting against the sea peoples, then that's how we know the names of all the different sea peoples, because he lists them, among them the Philistines. And then at the end, like typical hero fashion, he says he repulsed them, kicked them out, and he allowed them to live under the shadow of Mount Carmel. Yeah, like, you're very gracious there. You know, hardly. He didn't want to drive them any further out. He didn't really want to, and so they came and they lived here. Now, in Deuteronomy, that's what 31 is. In Deuteronomy, when God tells them that the people they're going to drive out.
Can I ask real quick?
Yeah, please.
13th century BC or 15th BC is
1200s.
12. Yeah, but parallel with what in the Bible? What age?
That is great. So this is the late Bronze Age, and this is why I think that the Exodus is right in this time frame.
Okay, is that whole thing?
Yes, that's the whole reason for that.
Okay.
When they list all the nations that Israel is supposed to drive out of the land in Deuteronomy, the Philistines aren't mentioned. Now I gotta find it, sorry. Deuteronomy 7, verse 1. See everybody that's listed? The Hittites, Girgashites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and the Jebusites. Notice no Philistines. And so you go, this time frame, it's before the Philistines come in, but in this time of the collapse of the Bronze Age. Because by the time you get around to Judges 14, they're not mentioned in any of the conquests of Joshua, and they're not mentioned in the first part of the book of Judges. And then you get around to Judges 14 in the story of Samson, and all of a sudden the Philistines show up. They're not anywhere else until then. Go ahead.
Except for in Genesis and Exodus.
Yes, with it. And the Exodus comment is, don't go that way because you're going to see war. And the Genesis comment is proleptic, like it'll be the Philistine, you'll know it sometime because it'll be called the Philistine land. But they weren't there yet. It'd be like calling Fremont 150 years ago.
So how does the fact that the Philistines are not in Deuteronomy 7 argue for a late date?
They're not one of the people they're going to drive out.
Wouldn't that be just the same as it was early date? They still weren't there yet.
But then they show up. Okay, that's true. That's true. Terminus quo not qua. Yeah, you're right.
Whatever that's saying.
Okay.
Whatever you say on that one.
But then they show up in Judges 14, and so it's part of them. They're in there by then. But so put this together. He doesn't want them to leave Egypt up the coast because they're going to see the war that's pending working down the coast. And he says, that's the reason I don't want them to come down the coast, because they're going to see the war that's happening between the sea peoples and Egypt. And that war happens beginning in the mid 13th century, 1240 something. And so even as the sea peoples arrive, all of a sudden, if you have the Israelites coming up the coast, two people are invading the same land at the same time.
So why would the Philistines not be mentioned then in Deuteronomy if they're there?
Great question. That's a really good question as well.
Maybe that's not the land that God wanted them to conquer.
But it's part of their tribal lands. It's the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Dan and Ephraim, part of it. So as they come in from the east in this topsy-turvy world of the collapse of the Bronze Age, these are the 7 nations, if you will, that are vying for the highlands and the area that they're going, even up to Galilee, where the Philistines aren't.
Sure. So it'd be like clear out all of that and then work your way to the coast?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is at the beginning of 14. Flip over there to Judges 14. And as you go down this, we have the 5 episodes from Samson's life. And in this, if you look, he wants to marry a Philistine, right? And we talk about this at Bet Shemesh, because there's that assimilation and cross-cultural stuff that you see archaeologically there. And then when you come down, look at, verse 3, Dad says, don't do that. Why are you marrying a Philistine? And he says, that's what I really want. Look at that, kind of this parenthetic thought in verse 4.
We're seeking the opportunity against the Philistines.
Say it again, Peter.
It was from the Lord, for you is seeking an opportunity against the Philistines.
Yeah.
Or at that time they were ruling over Israel.
Yeah. And so as you get a little bit later, you see when Samson goes up into Judah, the people of Judah are mad at him and say, please don't do this. Don't you know that there are rulers? And they say that in chapter 15, verse 11. Do you not know the Philistines rule over us? Why have you done this to us? And so the story of Samson, this is, again, this could be redundant from what we do at Bet Shemesh. The story of Samson is God creating such a disdain in some ways that those two cultures can't assimilate.
From the
stories of Samson.
From the story side of creating the disdain so that there's no way in the future.
Yeah.
There's no crossbreeding.
Yeah.
We'll keep
We're going to Bet
pure.
Shemesh today.
We will be going to Bet. Probably eventually. Yeah. Okay, so, why are we here? The idea that, okay, the Philistines are coming in the, mid 13th century. They see peoples grow. They don't really attack Egypt. And then they do attack Egypt twice, the last of which is in the beginning of the 12th century. And they get repulsed to this area. It gives us an idea of when Samson lived. And the time frame then, you have to back it up, but the one hint in there is that don't go up the coast because you're going to run into war. Go ahead, Peter.
No, I'm just thinking through that. There's something interesting about the fact that the Philistines didn't want to stay here. Like, they were looking for food and they were headed towards the Nile.
Yeah.
Whereas God took them out of that land and took the Israelites out of that land under slavery, but still, was that a better land to live in than here? I always got the impression that this land of milk and honey was more appealing.
Which they'd never seen, but that's why they always want to go back down there.
Right.
Same reason Philistines want to go down there.
It's more vegetation than anything.
Yeah, and the Nile River.
Yeah.
They're both have the same thought in the back of their mind. Egypt's better.
Right.
Say that again.
They both have in their mind that Egypt is better.
Egypt is better. That's the better place to be.
Yeah, they have the Nile River and crops.
Yeah.
We went down there and the Israelites are like, can we just go back down there, please?
I want to go back into slavery.
At least there's food.
Yeah.
The Philistines were here for several centuries, though. Because,
Yes.
Samson's much after the conquest.
Until Assyria wipes them out. But that comment about don't send them up the coast because they'll run into war says to me, because they had war with the Amalekites down in Sinai. They had war with the Arad in the biblical Negev. They had a little bit of conflict with Edom and Moab and the Ammonites. But it was nothing compared to what they would have seen had they come up against the people that were ready to attack Egypt.
This is still before the 12, Joshua and Caleb come and explore the land that's right.
Yeah.
So they came up in this area and they were afraid.
Yeah. Says the place they went though was in the highlands. They came up past a rod.
They went
Yeah.
on the coast, though.
Yeah.
Do you think it's the war between the Philistines in Egypt, or is it the Philistines and the others in the land?
It's a great question. But it gives you a sense of what that time frame is. And no wonder the Israelites are like, who are we?
Right.
These people are warriors.
Well, especially if they're afraid of the sea.
Yeah.
You don't see people, and now you have sea people coming in.
Yeah. Philistines bring with them iron. They introduce the Iron Age to the land. They probably picked it up from the Hittites. And so they made really great chariots. They had chariots in the Egyptian carvings. They had chariots that carried 3 people versus the Egyptian 2 because they used iron. Part of the collapse of the Bronze Age, as you remember that, is because they could no longer make bronze. They didn't have all the materials for it.
What was the other materials?
It's copper and... I know, I was thinking about this too. What do you mix to make?
Is it like a 90-10 mixture?
Hang on, it's two big metals. What it just said.
Somewhere east.
Afghanistan.
Yeah. And they couldn't get it.
Right. Part of the collapse. Now, it's fascinating to me because we run over these stories so fast and the world situation that's happening right around it. So when we're at the Philistine cities like Azekah, so when David comes against Goliath, this is no small thing. It's been brewing for years. And as I mentioned about the crops, they need that cropland of the Elah Valley. And if Israel, we'll see it later when we're at Gath, if Israel gets around Azekah, there is little between Azekah and Gath. And Gath is a big hometown. So we'll see it when we're at Gath.
And how do you pronounce, is it Azekah?
Either you could say it either Azekah or Azekah. Either one.
I'm always confused about that.
Yeah, pick one and keep it that way. I keep going back and forth.
So you're saying there's a people group that lives in an area on this coast, and another people group wants to take over that area so they can claim it as their own.
Does that sound familiar?
It does. Right here,
Yeah.
still.
Yes.
So there's going to be fighting. People are going to be upset about that. God's people are going to lose hope
Yeah.
because they see that. Yeah.
Where's the verse about the resorts?
Yeah. First book of Trump.
So I think it's interesting then that Galilee is called the Naphtali and Zebulun. This region up here, this is going to be the beginning of the place for all nations. This is for all people. It's not going to be. This is where the Philistines live, and this is where this people live. Like God's plan all along is for all nations to be one in Christ.
Yeah.
Like the Galatians passage.
Yeah. Which makes the stories of Ruth, or some of the others that, where all of a sudden they're in the line, you go like, that's just so bizarre. Because God at one point in Deuteronomy says, nope, definitely not the Moabites. And then you got Ruth, and you go like, well, what do you mean? And their big thing is the God that they're fighting. They don't want the God of Dagon, or they don't want the God of Chemosh or Moloch.
Is that kind of the Psalms that say, I'll raise up even your enemies to take out the others?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've heard me say this before about Hatzor, but if I were going to put a date to the Exodus related to this, Akhenaten is this heretical pharaoh that dumps all the gods of Egypt in favor of one, Aten, the sun god, or at least leans more heavily to that. And he doesn't just worship Aten, he beheads and chops off the faces and chops off the hands of the other gods.
Can't see, can't do anything.
Yes. And so Aten, or Akhenaten, is you go like, what happened that made him so radically different? And although you can never prove it yet, the idea that somehow is related to this time of the Egyptians getting throttled, and that he becomes Pharaoh in the 1350 era. So if you either as part of or right after that, if he's a successor Pharaoh to his father Amenhotep III, he's the fourth, and you go like, okay, he's got post-traumatic stress syndrome. You see the sea peoples coming in, and you see some of the destruction layers around here, particularly the one at Hatzor. It just kind of lines up really pretty well with the kind of the dating of the Exodus.
So, you're saying Akhenaten is the Exodus Pharaoh.
Either before or after, right? Or right at, or he's the subsequent one after.
What year?
1350 is when he begins to reign. So
What year you're saying from the Exodus?
I put it somewhere right around 1350.
Okay, right at.
Yeah, and give or take, I don't know. In Hatzor, the destruction layer of the big palace / temple is somewhere right around 1290, somewhere in there. And so if you take 40 years of the Exodus wanderings, and then he does his battles down here, the 3 battles, Joshua does his 3 battles down there, and then goes up north and does the Hatzor battle, it puts it in about the right time frame. Joshua lives to 110. So he's about 20 something when he comes out of there. So he's got, if you will, 90 years of working here. So he probably, goes all the way till 1250, 1260, something like that.
And when's the burn layer of Hatzor?
12, I believe it's 1292 or something like that, as best we can. You're always going to give it 10 years either side, but it's in the 13th century. Okay, so there's a bunch of data points. What's the concepts? If you're with a group of people and you've done this, and the historian people will love it, and they'll go like, oh, that makes it so cool, because now it seems like I understand the page, and other people are going like, okay, so what?
Keeps his promises to us.
Say again?
God keeps his word. He keeps his promises. We might not like the outcome, but he follows through on everything he says.
Like, what makes you think of that from this whole scenario?
Because he warns. Well, you haven't given a specific passage that we're looking at, right? But just the Philistines in general.
Yeah.
He's surrounded it with a warning. He knows that this is an oppressive group. It's going to be intimidating for the Israelites, and so he's like showing protection through it. And he's well aware of what they're going to be encountering every time they're going to interact with the Philistines, and he tells them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he could be the God that just snuffs them out, but he doesn't. He's like, no, this is going to be a challenge for you. I'm aware of this.
Yeah. Turn east.
Yeah. So his word is true. It's accurate.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about the turmoil of the world at this time. It's a really bad time to move. Like, for him to pull his people out of Egypt at that time. And it shows that it's not despite of, it's because of. He's working all these events. He knew exactly when he would be bringing his people into line.
Yeah.
It wasn't just when they grew to the right size that they would come into line. He's using this whole shifting to put them in place.
Yeah.
Understanding that when the world is at war, when the world is fighting, that's not a time to hunker down. That's a time to follow God's faithfully.
Good.
That's when we know he's still at work, even in the midst of world powers. In fact, even more so.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that makes it possible for me to watch the news at night.
Right, yeah. to know that he's still working in the midst of this. He hasn't forgotten us. In fact, he might be doing something big. He might be using this as an opportunity to give us something better than Egypt.
Yeah. Yeah. You're thinking hard here, Jeff.
I don't know if this is it or not. I don't know what I'm thinking about is coming off of the Samson stories of God maintaining or working to get a separation of his people from sin, we'll say. That throughout this time, God allowed the Philistines to stay here, but He wanted His people to be separate from them. And I think of AA, the person always says, I'm Jeff, I'm an alcoholic. They never say, I'm Jeff, I used to be an alcoholic. It's always there. The Philistines are always there, but cordoned off, and you have to continue to do battle against them to keep them in their spot, but you'll never get rid of that temptation, that sin, whatever it might be. They'll be there. Let's ignore the Assyrians for the moment. But, but they'll be there the whole time. And we need to continue to cordon them off and not do like Saul did, where he started fighting among the Christians, we'll say. And where do we find the Philistines then? Up at Beit Shean.
Yes.
So they weren't cordoned off, and they run all over the land until they killed King Saul.
Yeah.
So the importance of keeping them in their spot and not letting them get into our daily life. So.
Maybe another side of that coin, like I like the correlation between like AA, or whatever maybe it's not the temptation, but the threat on my life. Too much alcohol is a threat on my life actually, and so they keep getting that tension where it's like it's always going to be there. There's always a threat on my life.
We all have our pet sins or pet temptations that are there for us, different for each person.
Yeah.
But Satan prowls.
I love that when they take the Ark of the Covenant, God's evangelistic mission through them, and even it says, that when Dagon falls over twice,
Right.
the second time his head falls off and his hands fall off. Same thing, the idea that can't see, can't have any power, and then it says, this is why the priests of Dagon don't step on the threshold even to this day. I love the idea that God just put a reminder of them that Yahweh's more powerful than our God. And so while they're separate, they are very aware that Yahweh is the big God.
Going back to Akhenaten.
Yeah.
Were you saying he worshipped one God, monotheist, essentially?
Aten, yeah.
But he wasn't worshiping the one true God. Do you think he got him confused? Do you think he...
I don't know. And there's question about how monotheistic he was. But he's a heretic king. Yeah. And as soon as he dies, they get rid of him and they get everything that he did. They wipe it out and they go back to the old gods.
Yeah.
So it's something traumatic for him to make this weird major shift.
There's a lot in it to speculation that he was using it to try and get more power over Egypt with the power grab.
He moves the capital. He moves where the capital is. He moves it to Amarna, and then he does all this other stuff.
One application that stands out to me is the sovereignty of God.
Sure.
Don't go this way because there's these wars and this is going to impact you in these ways. And so sovereign both over time and space. Knowing when you can face these things, who you can face. And if you're not ready, God moving us out of the way. Again, he may not sniff out the enemy, but he's aware of it. He's
Yeah.
to guide us.
Yeah. So good. So good. Boy, that helps me watch the news.
It's such a big thing. It ties in with people being afraid of us coming here. The fear is just so strong right now.
Well, and it's really, I don't know if it started then, but it certainly was hugely prominent then during COVID, safety.
Yeah.
And safe means never. Like, if you're going to be safe, you'll never do anything, and then you won't be safe doing that. Like, reducing risk is one thing, but safety, you know what I mean? So we're not going to be stupid. We're not going to go visit Gaza City because something's in there. You know what I mean? We're not doing that today.
Right.
So reduce risk, but safe means never. And then you can't live.
Telling people have more of an accident dying, or more of a chance of dying on the way to church in a car accident than coming over here.
Even security is a thing that comes up all the time at our school. And like, well, we need bigger gates. We need it's kind of funny. They came up with this plan to put in bigger gates. And the day after they came up with the plan, somebody came in and welded a section of the gate that we already had and just took it.
Yeah, right after the approval.
Right after the approval, it was like,
They stole part of it.
Fencing.
they stole
Yeah. And then we have money to upgrade the camera system, and so we have really good footage on camera of guys breaking into. We have 5 sheds in the back of our property, breaking the locks, going in and stealing stuff. We've got great cameras to catch it all. Like, but it doesn't stop them. None of this stuff stops.
and even the
So it doesn't
shoot.
mean you shouldn't do it,
Yeah, right.
but safe is never. Like, you just can't.
Right. The
Finally,
sh-
you have to trust in God.
Yeah.
You're right.
Not
That's
in
right.
chariots and horses.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the other issue that comes up, because I think there is probably an age group or a political sphere that is fixated on safety, and then the other would be like why would you go to Israel? They're the bad guys and they're creating a genocidal problem in Gaza. There's that kind of issue too. And how do you speak to people about what's God's word say to us about that issue, with the personal application? So just kind of mulling that over. And the only thing I keep coming back to is Jesus said there will be fighting always, right? This is sad. It's sad. It's still sad. It's sad now. It's happened time and time again. It was sad then. But I don't really have anything nice to say after that.
Yeah. Just kind of get used to it, huh? There's going to be.
Yeah, get used to it.
Okay.